A very good day to all the participants of the Faculty Development Program on Embedded and Real-Time Systems. I am Dr. S.R. Malathi from the Department of ECE, Sri Venkateswara College of Engineering. I will be covering the topics from Unit 2. Unit 2 is about ARM processor and peripherals. The various topics under Unit 2 are listed. It's about ARM architecture and its versions, instruction set, stacks and subroutines, features of the microcontroller LPC214X family, peripherals and timer unit, pulse width modulation unit and UART, and also the block diagram of ARM 9 and ARM Cortex M3 microcontroller unit. Being a faculty development program, there may be faculties who are new to the teaching profession, and also there may be faculties who are about to teach this subject for the very first time. For them, I would like to give a small note. It is always better to give a review of all the basic subjects which the students have studied in their lower semesters and bring them to the current track. So for this embedded and real-time systems, we will be seeing about the classification of computer architecture and characteristics of microprocessor and microcontroller in the forthcoming slides. We can show this kind of simple computing systems block diagram and ask the students to list out the various input devices, output devices, and ask them about what is data memory, program memory, and also ask them about the various important blocks inside a central processing unit and what different types of central processing units they have studied, etc. Depending on the instruction set architecture of the CPU, they can be classified as CISC and RISC. CISC stands for Complex Instruction Set Computer and RISC for Reduced Instruction Set Computer. In CISC, as the name implies, the instructions are more complex than RISC CPUs. Because in CISC, the number of operations embedded in a single instruction is more, and that's why it also consumes more number of clock cycles per instruction. But at the same time, the number of instructions needed per program to complete a task is less. This kind of CISC processors are manufactured by companies like IBM, VAX and Intel. Some of the processors are also listed here, and CISC processors are widely used in desktops, laptops and servers. To understand the complexity nature of the CISC CPUs, consider the MUL instruction. Depending on the addressing mode of the MUL instruction, the operand may be an immediate operand residing in the instruction itself, or the operand may be residing in a register or in a memory location. Once this MUL instruction is executed, operands will be fetched from the register or memory location. The product will be computed and will be stored in a location according to the addressing mode. So the programmer has to take care of storing all these functions needed to execute a MUL instruction. Whereas in a RISC processor, the complexity is broken down into simple instructions, so which we will see in the forthcoming slides. The next type of instruction set architecture of the CPU is RISC, Reduced Instruction Set Computer. RISC processors make use of simple instructions which can be executed within a single clock cycle. Because of this, they also consume less power. Hence, they are used in microcontrollers which are used to build embedded systems. One of the unique features of RISC is pipelining. All these are achieved at the cost of the number of instructions per program. That is, the number of instructions in a program will be more compared to CISC to achieve the same task. In summary, RISC CPUs have less number of instructions, and these instructions have less instructional formats and few types of addressing modes. To highlight the difference between RISC and CISC processors, Let us once again consider the MUL instruction which was used in CISC CPU. In a RISC CPU, the same multiplication operation can be achieved by making use of three instructions: load, product, and store. Load instruction loads the data from the memory bank to a register, and product instruction computes the product between two operands placed in the register, and store instruction places the data present in the register into a memory bank. So this simple example highlights the main difference between RISC and CISC in terms of the number of instructions and the complexity of the instructions. In most of the embedded systems, microcontrollers make use of random access memory and read-only memory for specific purposes. RAM, which is volatile, is used as data memory, and ROM, which is non-volatile, is used as program memory in most of the embedded systems. In the previous slides, we saw how CPUs can be classified with respect to instruction set architecture. CPUs can also be classified with respect to its internal architecture, broadly as von Neumann architecture and Harvard architecture. In von Neumann architecture, same memory is used to store instructions as well as data, which is the kind of architecture followed in conventional computing systems. Whereas in Harvard architecture, separate memories are used for storing instructions and data. Most of the embedded systems make use of this kind of microcontrollers. Instructions are stored in ROM and data are stored in RAM. In order to give an overview about what the students have learnt already, we can show this kind of simple block diagram about a microprocessor and highlight about the various important blocks within a microprocessor. Also, we can explain to them about how a microprocessor is used to build a computing system by making use of memory and I/O ports. How a microprocessor is interfaced with memory and I/O ports in building a small microcomputer can be highlighted. While explaining about microcontrollers, we can ask the students to identify the various blocks which were placed external to the microprocessor in a microcomputing system and how they are placed onto the same chip in a microcontroller, like the memory block and I/O blocks. Apart from that, we can also ask the students to identify the additional blocks which are placed onto the same chip, like counters, timing and control, interrupt circuits, etc. Whereas these blocks are all used externally in the case of a microprocessor based computing system. When we talk about microcontrollers and embedded systems, it is inevitable to talk about ARM processors, because ARM processors are the one which are widely used in most of the embedded systems. ARM processors are reasonably good in performance as well as they consume less power, because of which they are used in most of the battery operated devices. This slide shows a glimpse of ARM powered applications. You can see that in almost every consumer electronic items, an ARM processor is embedded within itself. Let us see a brief history of ARM. ARM is the short form of Advanced RISC Machine Limited, Advanced Reduced Instruction Set Computing Machines Limited. It was founded in 1990, which was owned by Acorn, followed by it was acquired by companies like Apple and VLSI. Initially, Acorn was considered as a computer manufacturing company. It developed 32-bit RISC processors for its own use. From here onwards, we will be seeing about ARM architecture versions. Some of the popular ARM architectures are listed below: ARM 7, ARM 9, ARM 10. Even advanced versions of ARM architectures are presently available. but only the basic ones we will be seeing. If you see, each of the ARM architecture has different stages in its pipeline. ARM 7 has only 3 pipeline stages: fetch, decode and execute. ARM 9 has 5 stages in its pipeline: fetch, decode, execute, memory and write back. ARM 10 has 6 stages of pipeline: fetch, decode, compute operand, execute, memory and write back. As the number of stages in the pipeline increases, the number of instructions executed per second also increases. How is this achieved? If we take ARM 7, there are only 3 pipeline stages. And if we consider the decode stage, it will take some amount of time, say x1. Coming to ARM 9 architecture, it also has a decode stage in its pipeline. This decode stage may take some amount of time x2. So if you compare the time taken by each of these stages, x2 will be less than x1, which means that now the complexity of each of the pipeline stages are broken and simplified and extended as a new stage. So by doing so, the number of instructions fetched also increases in a period of time, and the number of instructions which are executed, completely executed, also increases. So in this way, if we ignore the initial latency in a particular pipeline, then the number of throughput increases. Here we are able to see a comparison of ARM family processors. ARM 7, ARM 9, ARM 10 and ARM 11 are compared. They are all compared with respect to the pipeline depth, clock frequency, power, throughput, architecture and multipliers. If we see the pipeline depth, ARM 7 has 3 stage, then 5 stage, 6 stage and 8 stage till ARM 11. The clock frequency in megahertz also, you can see how from ARM 7 to ARM 11 the frequency has drastically increased. So which gives an idea about how fast the processors are able to do their computations. As the number of stages in the pipeline increases, the number of instructions that are executed also increases because of the clock frequency increase. And then comparing with respect to the power, ARM 7 and ARM 9, they consume very less power compared to ARM 10 and 11. And between ARM 10 and 11, there is no significant difference between them. But with respect to the clock frequency, there is a drastic difference. Comparing with respect to the throughput, ARM 10 and ARM 11, they give the highest throughput. And architecture wise, we can see ARM 7 follows the oldest architecture method, von Neumann method, whereas ARM 9, 10 and 11, they follow Harvard architecture. So Harvard architecture is nothing but having separate data memory and instruction memory. Von Neumann architecture has common memory for both data as well as instruction. And with respect to multiplier also, there is a difference. ARM 7 and 9 have 8x32 multipliers, whereas ARM 10 and 11 have 16x32 multipliers. Let us see how the throughput can be increased by increasing the number of stages in the pipeline. Here the pipeline stages of 2 ARM processors are shown. One is ARM 7 TDMI with 3-stage pipeline and ARM 9 TDMI processor with 5-stage pipeline. So in a pipeline, each stage consumes some amount of time to complete its work. So in a 3-stage pipeline, for every clock cycle, it receives an input from the previous stage. So here the first stage is a fetch stage. So for the first clock cycle, the instruction will be fetched and loaded into the stage. During the second clock cycle, the first instruction will be passed on to the decode stage, and the second instruction will be fetched and placed here in the first stage, fetch stage. Now the first instruction which was placed in the decode stage would have been decoded, and the corresponding register select will be done. And here, apart from that, if the fetched instruction is a thumb instruction, it has to be converted to an ARM instruction, and then it has to be decoded, and the corresponding register has to be selected for reading the operand. During the third clock cycle, the decode stage will pass on its output to the execute stage. So in the execute stage, the corresponding register will be selected from where the operand is passed on to the ALU or the shifters which are present in the ARM processor, and then the result can be written back into the corresponding register. So when the first instruction is executed in the last stage, the second instruction will be decoded in the decode stage. The third instruction would have been fetched and placed in the fetch stage. So at the end of third clock cycle, we get the output for the first instruction. Now each of these stage may take different amount of time to complete its work. So the clock period or the speed in which the instructions are fetched depends upon the longest period taken by any stage. For example, assume that the decode stage is taking the longest period of time. So the time taken by the decode stage to decode a particular instruction will decide the time period of the clock. So the instructions that are fetched and placed into the fetch stage depends upon the time period decided by the decode stage. Now coming to ARM9 TDMI, the same thing happens, but here the number of stages are increased. So what are these additional stages? From where did they come? Actually, the complex decode stage and part of the execute stage are broken down, they are simplified and considered as two different stages. And apart from that, there is another memory stage also. Now in the decode stage, by making use of additional hardwares which can decode either thumb instruction as well as ARM instruction, that is not a single hardwares which can decode ARM instruction, hardware which can decode thumb instructions are all placed here. So these additional stages are available at the cost of additional hardwares. So because of these additional hardwares, the decoding operation is done very quickly. And when it comes to the execute stage, comparatively it is not consuming more time as that of the decode stage. So it gives the output. The memory access stage accesses the location where the result has to be written. Then the register write stage writes the result back into the memory stage. So this is how the instruction is executed using a 5-stage pipeline. So here the time taken by the complex stage, one of the complex stage which we are considering as decode stage, will be very less. The time taken by this decode stage will be less compared to the previous architecture. So because of this, the clock period is also reduced. When clock period is reduced, the clock frequency increases. When clock frequency increases, the rate at which the instructions are fetched and placed into each stage also increases. So thus the throughput increases. So in this way, as the number of stages in the pipeline increases, the clock period reduces or the clock frequency increases, and so the throughput, that is the number of instructions that are executed within a given period of time, increases. ARM is based on RISC architecture. RISC supports simple but powerful instructions which can be executed in single cycle, and the period of each cycle is very less, which means that it can be operated at high clock frequencies. The major design features of RISC architectures are instructions, pipeline, registers, and load store architecture. When we say instructions, there are less number of instructions in its instruction set, and each of these instructions can be executed within one clock cycle. Also, these instructions are fixed in length. The pipeline decode stage alone is enough to completely decode the instruction. There is no need to have a microcode as in the case of CISC architectures. As far as registers are concerned, large number of general purpose registers are available, and the load store architecture is one of the attractive feature of RISC architecture. That is, data processing instructions completely work on registers alone. Also, the load store instructions are used to transfer data to and from the memory. So everything is kept simple in the case of RISC architecture. Nowadays, even CISC machines make use of RISC concepts. ARM architecture is different from pure RISC architecture. A pure RISC architecture must have instructions which are of equal size, that is 32 bits in size, and these instructions must be executed within one clock cycle. Whereas various ARM architecture versions are not like that. For example, there are instructions which can load and store from multiple registers. In order to have high code density, this kind of instructions are used, and these instructions take more than one clock cycles also. And also there are some instructions which make use of a hardware called inline barrel shifter. For this, the instructions used are more complex in nature, and they are used to improve the performance as well as the code density. They also consume more than one clock cycle. Apart from that, there are also instructions which are smaller in size. There are 16-bit instructions called as thumb instruction set, and these are used in order to increase the code density. Usually they give an improvement of 30% increase in the code density. And also there are conditional execution instructions which reduces branching, thereby it can increase the performance of the processor. And there are also some enhanced instructions which are used for DSP applications. Two versions of ARM architectures are shown here, ARM 7 and ARM 9. ARM 7 follows von Neumann architecture and ARM 9 follows Harvard architecture. As we know, von Neumann architecture doesn't have separate instruction memory and data memory, whereas Harvard architecture has. In both types of architectures, the input ports and output ports are considered as one of the memory location. This kind of mapping is called as memory mapped I/O. Because of this, there is no specific instructions for fetching input or sending output. Using simple load and store instructions, inputs are fetched and outputs are sent from the processor. Here, various ARM versions are listed. It is good to understand the naming conventions of ARM architectures. Let us see about some of them. Here, this ARM V5TEXP gives certain information to us. What are they? V5 stands for version 5 of ARM architecture, and T stands for support of thumb instruction. E stands for enhanced DSP instructions, and this XP stands for except certain instructions of DSP, all others are supported. Some instructions like LDRD, MCRR, MRRC are all not supported by this processor. So the naming convention gives certain information to the user. Similarly, another processor, ARM V5TEJ, indicates that this is a version 5 ARM architecture. T indicates that it supports thumb instruction. We know that thumb instruction are 16-bit instructions. Usually ARM processors work on 32-bit instructions. If there is a T in the ARM version's name, it indicates that apart from 32-bit instruction, it can also execute 16-bit instructions. E indicates that the extended DSP or enhanced DSP instructions can be executed by this processor. Here there is one more mnemonic called as J. J stands for JSL extension support. So JSL extension support is nothing but the processor is capable of executing Java bytecodes. Here various ARM families are listed. Along with that, for each ARM family, different versions of ARM architecture and the corresponding ARM cores are listed. Now, what is the difference between ARM architecture and ARM core? ARM architecture indicates the set of instructions which can be executed by that hardware, and ARM core is nothing but a processor interfaced with essential components such as flash, RAM, ROM, and feature components such as capsense, BLE, I2C, etc. So ARM architecture is related with the underlying hardware, and ARM core is nothing but the ARM processor along with additional essential components and feature components together is called as a ARM core. Here again some of the ARM family and the explanation for its naming conventions are shown. Few more information about the naming conventions. T stands for thumb instruction support, that is 16-bit instructions can be executed by the ARM processor, and D stands for on-chip debug support. There are special hardwares which can be used to debug, and M stands for enhanced multiplier, which can give a full 64-bit result and used for high performance. I stands for embedded ICE hardware. ICE stands for in-circuit emulator. So in the naming convention, if these mnemonics are present, T, D, M, I, so it gives this information about the processor. In this slide, even more higher versions of ARM families are listed. ARM 9, ARM 10 and Xscale ARM families are listed. These are all used for various real-time embedded system applications. These are also different families of ARM processors. Cortex A is application processor, Cortex R are real-time processors, Cortex M are microcontrollers. Application processors are usually used in mobile phones, telephones, tablets, laptops, etc. And real-time processors are used in applications like medical devices, cars and systems. Microcontrollers are used in robotic systems and small consumer electronics. In the forthcoming slides, we will be seeing about ARM architectures. So we will start with the typical ARM7 architecture. So from the block diagram, it can be understood that ARM processor has got a very big register bank. Apart from that, there is also special multiplier circuit and a barrel shifter. So the ARM processor supports instructions where the arithmetic and logic operations can be performed on two operands, and one of the operand can be either multiplied with some other value and then ALU operation can be performed, or the barrel shifter can perform some rotations or shift operations, and then an arithmetic logical operation can be performed. So this multiplier and barrel shifters are special kind of circuits which are available in the ARM architecture. So the large register banks and these extra circuitries provides a high performance operation or instruction execution. So apart from these registers, there are also some hidden registers which are not visible to the programmer. Then ARM7 architecture supports thumb instructions also. Here we can see a thumb to ARM translator. So thumb instructions are nothing but a subset of ARM instructions. ARM instructions are 32 bit in size, whereas thumb instructions are 16 bits in size. If a thumb instruction is fetched, that has to be converted to ARM instruction and then only it is decoded. So this is a typical architecture of ARM7. Here the ARM architecture features are listed. ARM architecture has large number of uniform register files. All the registers are 32 bits in size. Also, ARM architecture supports load and store method. That is, the operands can be loaded into the register content and the operands cannot be operated in the memory directly. So either the operands are loaded into the register or from the register the operands can be stored into the memory. And also ARM supports simple addressing modes like register addressing modes or immediate addressing modes. You know that addressing mode is nothing but the way in which the operands are specified in the instruction. Either the operands are placed into a register and those registers are used in the instruction, or the operands are placed in the instruction field itself. But the operands are not directly accessed from the memory or processed by the instruction directly from the memory. The next feature is all the instructions are uniform in size, mostly 32 bits in size, and if they are ARM instructions, if it is a thumb instruction, it is 16 bits in size. So this simplifies instruction decoding. In continuation to ARM features, the ARM architecture provides control over both arithmetic logic unit and shifter in most of the data processing instructions. That is, the instructions can instruct the ALU to perform a particular operation, or it can also instruct the shifter to shift certain number of times. So that control over ALU and shifter is there through the instructions. Also, there is support of auto increment and auto decrement addressing modes to optimize the program loops. So this auto increment, auto decrement addressing modes helps us to create program loops for applications. The load and store multiple registers are used to maximize the data throughput. And apart from that, there are conditional execution instructions. Instead of control transfer instructions, ARM has conditional execution instructions. Most of the instructions fall under this category, and this maximizes the execution throughput. A branch instruction usually consumes more amount of time than conditional execution instruction. ARM has different processor modes and registers. The 7 processor modes for ARM are listed here. User processor mode, fast interrupt request mode, normal interrupt request mode, supervisor mode, abort mode, undefined mode, and system mode. The corresponding mnemonic codes are also listed here. The user mode is the normal program execution mode. The processor enters into a high priority interrupt request mode whenever a high priority interrupt arrives, and when a low priority interrupt comes, the processor enters into IRQ mode. If the processor is reset, or when a software interrupt instruction is executed, the processor enters into supervisor mode. If the program tries to access a memory location which it is not supposed to access, then the processor enters into abort mode. If the program has some instructions which are not defined for this particular processor, then the processor enters into undefined mode. If the processor is using operating system tasks, then the processor enters into system mode. So out of these 7 modes, the processor may be switching between one mode to the other mode depending upon the circumstance it is facing. ARM has 37 registers. Each of them are 32 bits long. These registers are program counter, which is only 1. There is one CPSR register, current program status register, and 5 saved program status registers, SPSR, and 30 general purpose registers. The current processor mode governs which of the several register sets is accessible. All the registers are not accessible for all the modes. We know that ARM architecture has 7 processor modes. So for each of these processor modes, certain number of registers are only accessible. For a specific mode of operation, only 16 registers are visible to the programmer. In each mode, a particular set of registers R0 to R17, totally 13 registers are accessible. R13 is usually used as a stack pointer, though ARM does not have stack architecture, does not support stack. It can have a software manipulated stack. Under such circumstances, R13 can be used as a stack pointer. R14 is a link register. A link register is nothing but a register which holds the program counter content whenever a branch instruction is executed. ARM has got a few branch instruction and branch and link instruction. Whenever these instructions are executed, the program counter content is loaded into the R14 register, which is acting as a link register. After a return from a subroutine call or an exception handler, the program counter is again loaded with the link register content. R15 is used as program counter. Program counter is the register which points to the next instruction. Here in ARM, due to the pipelined architecture, program counter points to 2 instructions after the instruction which is currently being executed. So each instruction occupies 4 bytes of location, 4 bytes in the memory. So usually the memory is byte addressed memory. So each location occupies 8 bits. So 32-bit instruction occupies 4 memory locations, and the program counter usually points to the next instruction to be accessed. So here we are talking about ARM7 architecture, which has got 3-stage pipeline. So this program counter points to the instruction which is 2 instructions after the current instruction being executed. The CPSR register, current program status register, is nothing but a flag register as found in the conventional processors. The privileged modes, except the system mode, can also access a particular SPSR register. So saved program status register usually holds a copy of CPSR register whenever the ARM processor switches between one mode of operation to another mode of operation. So when it enters into a new processor mode, the SPSR corresponding to that new processor mode holds the value of CPSR that was previously held by the processor. So ARM has got ARM can support 6 data types, both in signed and unsigned format. The data can be of 8-bit in size, which is nothing but byte, or the data can be a 6-bit data or half word, or it can be a 32-bit data or a word. These byte, half word or word can be either signed or unsigned. So totally 6 data types are supported. All the ARM operations are 32 bits. The shorter data types are only supported by data transfers. No data processing is done on smaller data types. So the data, 6 data types are shown here: the 8-bit byte, 16-bit half word, and 32-bit word. So you can see that the 8-bit occupies the lower, that is the byte of data occupies the lower 8 bits, and half word occupies the lower 2 bytes. Next, here we are seeing the current program status register, CPSR register. This is a 32-bit register. All the registers in ARM processors are 32 bits in size. This register is nothing but a flag register. For an ARM processor, it is called as CPSR. So moving from left to right, from most significant bit to the least significant bit, we can see that there are some condition code flags. N indicates a negative flag. Whenever the ALU operation creates a 1 in the most significant bit, this bit is set. negative flag is set. The 0 flag indicates whether the previously performed arithmetic logical operation resulted in a all 0 value in the result destination register. And the carry flag indicates whether the previously performed arithmetic operation resulted in a carry. The V flag or overflow flag indicates if the value has exceeded the permissible range of values. Apart from that, there are also a few other flags I and F which are used to mask the interrupts. If a 1 is set in this bit position I, the IRQ flag is set and IRQ is disabled. If a 1 is placed in this F bit, the fast interrupt request is disabled. So these are acting as mask bits for the interrupts. And apart from that, we know that ARM processor can execute 32-bit instructions as well as 16-bit instructions. 32-bit instructions execution is called as ARM mode and 16-bit instruction execution is called as thumb mode. When the processor has to be switched into the thumb mode, this T bit is set. And we know that the processor also can enter into one of the 7 processor modes. Whenever it enters into a particular mode, the bits here are accordingly set, and the bits here are set as per the exceptional handler, which is handling the exception. So the processor mode, by reading these mode bits, the user can find out which mode the processor is executing in. So this diagram shows a clear picture about how the CPSR register is used. So whatever I mentioned in the previous slide are only listed here. So N flag indicates a negative result from the ALU. Z flag, if it is set, it indicates that the result was a 0 in the ALU. And if C is 1, it indicates that ALU operation generated a carry. If B is set, ALU operation created an overflow. Similarly, there are some, apart from these 4 flags, there is another flag called as Q flag or sticky overflow flag. This is utilized in some special architecture, there is 5TEJ versions only, and it indicates if the saturation has occurred or not. And there is also another bit called as J bit, which is found in 5TEJ architecture family, and if this bit is set, it indicates that the processor is in JZL state or it is executing the Java bytecode. The rest all are same, which I have mentioned in the previous slide. See here, the T bit or thumb bit is 0 when the processor is in ARM state, and it can be set to 1 when it is in thumb state. So these bits actually reflects the arithmetic and logical operations outcome, the interrupt enabling and disabling of interrupts, the processor states, ARM state or thumb state, and the processor modes, 7 processor modes. These are all indicated by the status of bits which are set or reset in the CPSR register. Then few more information about the mode bits. The least significant 5 bits M0 to M4 determines the processor's operating mode. and there are only 7 operating modes for the processor. So these are the bit patterns which indicates a specific mode. When 1 followed by 4 zeros in M0 to M4 indicates the normal user mode. Similarly, the fast interrupt mode, supervisor mode, undefined mode, each of the modes are indicated by certain bit patterns. Some additional information about the special registers can be seen here. R15 acts as a program counter. So in any instruction, if R15 is used as a destination register, then that instruction is actually doing a program branch. So when R15 is changed, the sequence in which the program is executed also changes. So when R15 acts as a destination register, then that instruction is actually causing a branch from the program, from the main program. Similarly, R14 is used as link register, and this link register is used whenever there is a subroutine call. The content of program counter, that is R15 register, is copied into R14. For example, there is an instruction called as branch and link, BL. Whenever BL is executed, or whenever there is a jumping instruction, like the instruction mnemonic itself is B, branch. So whenever there is a jumping instruction executed, or when an interrupt occurs and interrupt handler takes over, then the content of R15 should be loaded into R14. So after the subroutine call is over, or after the interrupt handler has finished its job, R14 has to be loaded into R15 again. That is, link register content has to be copied into program counter, and we can resume the operation from the previous state. R13 is used as a stack pointer. In ARM architecture, there is no stack, but R13 is usually reserved as a stack pointer for software managed stack. So using instructions, we can create a stack like activity, and for such actions we can make use of R13 as a stack pointer. CPSR, that is the current program status register, holds the visible status of the processor, whereas SPSR is not visible. So here visible means that the ALU operations either set or reset the flags available in the CPSR. The SPSR is not at all altered by any of the ALU activities. Similarly, the instruction fast interrupt request or normal interrupt request can be masked only in the CPSR register. And also, when the processor switches between one mode to the other, the mode bits M0 to M4 reflect the mode in which the processor is operating. And whenever an interrupt arrives, or whenever an exception happens, the processor will be entering into a new mode, or the interrupt handler will take control. At that time, the content of CPSR is copied into SPSR of the corresponding processor mode or the interrupt handling mode. Once the exception is handled or interrupt handler completes its job, while returning, the SPSR content is again loaded into the CPSR. Next we'll see how the ARM processor switches between the ARM mode of operation or thumb mode of operation depending upon the program counter content. We know that program counter is the R15 register in the register bank. It is 32 bits in size. Also, every instruction that is fetched from the memory is 32 bits in size. So when the program counter points to a particular location, that address is actually multiples of 4. So for such addresses, the least significant 2 bits in the program counter will be always 0. So depending upon whether the program counter content is word aligned or not, the processor will be able to identify whether it has to operate in ARM mode or thumb mode. In the word aligned form, the last 2 bits of program counter are 0. But in the case of ARM7, there are 3 stages in the pipeline, and so the program counter points to 8 bytes ahead of the current instruction, or it may point to 12 bytes ahead if the current instruction includes a register specified shift. In both these cases, the program counter content will be anyhow 0 in the last 2 bit positions. So this indicates that the processor has to operate in the ARM mode. If the program counter content is changed in such a way that the last bit of the program counter is 0, then the processor is switched to the thumb mode, because in half word aligned instructions, the least significant bit alone will be 0. So when the address is incremented in the program counter, if the last bit in the program counter is continuously 0, that indicates that the ARM processor is in the thumb mode, and accordingly the CPSR register, current program status register's T bit, will be set or reset. Here, apart from thumb state and ARM state, there is one more state of operation for the ARM processor, that is JZL state. If the processor executes Java bytecode, then the processor enters into the JZL state. Next we will see about the register organization in ARM processors. The processor can operate in seven different modes: user mode, system mode, fast interrupt request mode, normal interrupt request mode, supervisor mode, undefined mode, and abort mode. For each of these modes, what are the set of registers which can be used when the processor is operating in that mode is shown. For user mode and system mode, all the registers R0 to R12, then R13 which is acting as stack pointer, R14 acting as link register, R15 acting as program counter, and current program status registers are used. In fast interrupt request mode, all the user mode registers R0 to R7, R15 that is the program counter, and CPSR registers are used. And apart from that, separate register banks labeled as R8 to R12, R13, R14 acting as stack pointer and link register respectively for this mode are used. Then there is also another register, SPSR, Save Program Status Register. So when the processor switches from user mode to fast interrupt request mode, CPSR content is copied into the corresponding SPSR register. Suppose if the processor enters from user mode to IRQ mode, the CPSR content in user mode will be copied to SPSR register in the IRQ mode. So this is how the registers are used. And in most of the operating modes, you can see the registers, there are some common registers which are used in all the modes of operations. Only in the fast interrupt request mode, more number of separate register banks are used. So here all the banked registers which are separate physical registers are shown, and these registers swap the contents in and out when the modes are switched. And also the registers are numbered. So 15 registers in the first column, then followed by 16 to 22, like that totally 30 registers are there in the register banks. Apart from that, there is a program counter. Only one program counter is there. The same program counter is only used by all the modes of operation. There is no separate program counter. So single R15 register is only used in all the modes of operation. There is one CPSR register, current program status register, and the same register is only used to store the current status in any mode of operation. But while switching from one mode of operation to another mode of operation, the previous CPSR value is loaded into the corresponding SPSR register of that mode. So here, in addition to this CPSR, there are 5 SPSRs. So altogether, if we count this, 30 plus 5 SPSR plus CPSR and a program counter, totally 37 registers are available in the ARM architecture. Next we will see the exception process. Whenever an exception occurs, the ARM processor stops executing the current instruction and begins execution at a fixed address in the memory, which is called as exception vectors. When an exception occurs, the processor also has to switch over to a new mode of operation. So out of the 7 modes of operation of the processor may have to enter into one of the modes. Assume that an IRQ request has come, that is a normal interrupt request has come. So when this interrupt request has come, the processor copies the current program status register into the SPSR register corresponding to the IRQ mode of operation. We know that there are 5 different SPSR registers corresponding to 5 different modes of operation of the processor. Then the CPSR mode bits are also changed appropriately, and the processor also changes to the ARM state, because if the processor has already been operating in a thumb state, it cannot remain in a thumb state. Whenever an exception occurs or whenever an interrupt occurs, the processor cannot remain in thumb state. All the switching over from one mode of operation to other mode can happen only in the ARM state. So the corresponding bits in the CPSR registers are altered to change into the ARM state. And also the mode bits are changed. The mode bits, the T bit, which indicates whether the processor is in thumb state or ARM state, are all changed. And also there is no provision for nested interrupts. So to avoid any receiving of further interrupts, this IRQ bit and FIQ bits are disabled by setting those bits to 1. So all these things happens whenever an interrupt occurs or if an exception occurs. Also, after the exception is handled or interrupt subroutine is executed, the processor has to come to the main routine. That happens by storing the return address in the link register of the corresponding mode. So now the link register of the corresponding mode will be holding the program counter content, and also the program has to be switched to the the processor has to be switched to the new processor mode. For that, the program counter content is loaded with the vector address of the exception that has occurred. So the exception may be a reset, or it may be undefined instruction execution, or an interrupt request may have arrived. So depending upon that, the corresponding vector from the vector table, that is, this is having a 32-bit pattern which is used as an address by the program counter. So this 32-bit pattern is loaded into the program counter. So now the sequence of execution gets changed because the program counter content has been changed. The previous value of the program counter is loaded into the link register of the corresponding mode. So whichever mode the processor gets switched into, that corresponding link register will be having the previous value of the program counter. The current value of the program counter is nothing but the vector address corresponding to the particular exception or the interrupt request. And also in the vector table we can see that this location starting with the address 0x14 is not filled with any of the vector address. This 32 bits here, that is the consecutive 4 bytes of locations are reserved in ARM architecture. Now once the exception is handled or after the instruction subroutine is executed, now the processor has to return to the previous state. For that, the exception handler or the interrupt handler should restore the CPSR register from the SPSR register of the particular mode. So from the mode from which it is transferring to the previous mode, that corresponding SPSR register value is again restored into the CPSR. And also the link register in the corresponding mode will be copied into the program counter register. So now again the sequence in which the programs are executed will be changed from the to the original one. So thus we saw how exceptions are handled in ARM by using a set of memory location called as vector table. So this vector table contains 32-bit patterns or words, has words which are loaded into the program counter, and in that way the exceptions are handled. This vector is placed in the bottom of the memory map starting from the address 0x00 to 0x1c. Also, one important thing should be understood. These 32-bit pattern available in the vector table should not be considered as a address. It is actually acting as a branch instruction. So this is how exceptions and interrupts are handled in ARM processors. Now let us see some additional information about thumb state registers. Thumb state provides a subset of ARM state registers. Here the 8 general purpose registers R0 to R7, which are also called as low registers, are used in thumb state. So thumb state uses low registers which are nothing but R0 to R7. Apart from these 8 registers, thumb state also makes use of stack pointer register and link register, which are all banked in all the modes. And the program counter register, current program status registers, as well as the saved program status registers banked in the privileged modes are used in thumb state. Also, the high registers R8 to R15 cannot be accessed when the processor is in thumb state. But there are some exceptions. There are few thumb state instructions such as move, add and CMP instructions which can make use of these high registers R8 to R15. So all the registers which are used in thumb state are shown here. So this all the banked registers are shown with this kind of gray shading. Now let us see about compare the processor, ARM processor in ARM state and thumb state with respect to these parameters, with respect to instruction size, core instructions, conditional execution, data processing instructions, program status register and register usage. We know that in ARM state 32-bit instructions are used by the processor. In thumb state, the instructions are of 16 bits in size. And in ARM state, all the core instructions are mostly conditional execution format. So in the forthcoming slides, we will be seeing about what is meant by conditional execution instructions and branch instructions. In ARM state, set of 58 instructions are available to the processor. In thumb state, 30 instructions are available to the processor. And most of these instructions in thumb state are branch type instructions, whereas in ARM state, the instructions are mostly conditional execution type. Also, the data processing instructions in ARM state can access barrel shifter and also the ALU. In thumb state, the barrel shifter and ALU can be accessed using separate instructions. The program status register in ARM state can read as well as write in privileged mode, whereas the program status register cannot be accessed in thumb state. So this is the reason why whenever an interrupt occurs or whenever an exception is to be handled, first the processor changes from thumb mode to ARM mode, and because of that only the program status register can be copied into the SPSR register. Now the next point indicates what are the registers that can be accessed by the ARM state and thumb state of the processor. ARM state can use 15 general purpose registers and the program counter. In thumb state, the processor can use 8 general purpose registers, 7 high registers and the program counter.